I looked my son squarely in the eyes and spoke with a calmness that surprised even me. "If your wife brings up my savings one more time," I said, "we're going to have a very serious conversation. I gave you both a housewarming gift, not permission to plan my future around my money. Is that clear?" Ethan shifted uneasily. His gaze dropped to the driveway, and he rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. Instead of answering directly, he muttered something that sounded like an apology. I knew that look. It was the expression of a man trapped between doing what was right and keeping his wife happy. The whole mess had started only 3 weeks earlier. After months of searching, Ethan and his wife Lauren had finally purchased a spacious 4-bedroom home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I was genuinely happy for them. Buying a first home was an exciting milestone, and I wanted to celebrate it properly. So I baked my famous lemon loaf, packed it in a basket, and tucked a congratulatory card inside. Along with the card was a check for $10,000. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't an investment. It was simply a mother's gift. 5 years had passed since my husband Arthur died. He had spent decades building a comfortable life for us through discipline and hard work. We were never wealthy enough for luxury vacations or expensive toys, but we had been wise with our money. After his passing, I continued living carefully, making sure my retirement savings would carry me through whatever the future held. That afternoon, we sat on the hardwood floor because their furniture hadn't arrived yet. Pizza boxes were scattered around us and everyone seemed relaxed. Then everything changed because of one careless mistake. While searching through my handbag for my reading glasses, I accidentally pulled out a folded retirement statement I'd been using as a bookmark. The paper slipped from my fingers. Before I could grab it, Lauren's eyes landed on the page. She didn't read the details. She didn't need to. The balance printed at the bottom told her everything she wanted to know. She handed the statement back with a bright smile that suddenly felt rehearsed. "Careful," she said sweetly. "You almost lost something important." I thanked her, but something about her expression unsettled me. Her smile hadn't changed. Her eyes had. From that moment forward, she looked at me differently, not as family, but as opportunity. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining things. Then the phone calls began. Lauren suddenly wanted to chat several times a week. She asked about my garden, my hobbies, and my health, before casually steering every conversation toward their new house. One afternoon, she mentioned that they were thinking about replacing the backyard with a luxury stone patio. "It'll cost around $25,000, she said cheerfully, "but it'll increase the home's value." I rinsed a coffee mug in the sink. "That sounds expensive." "It is," she admitted, "but with the extra financial cushion in the family, it seems like the perfect time." I frowned. "You already have the $10,000 I gave you." "That covered other things," she replied quickly. "Families should help each other build wealth." "My retirement isn't family spending money," I answered evenly. "It's for my future." She laughed lightly, pretending she hadn't meant anything by the comment, but she had. The following weekend, I visited again. Moving boxes still filled most of the rooms, yet Lauren wasn't discussing unpacking anymore. Instead, she walked through the house with a renovation contractor, criticizing perfectly good hardwood floors and talking about expensive upgrades. As they toured the house, she repeatedly used the phrase, "our budget," each time glancing toward me as though expecting me to volunteer. I never did. When it was time for me to leave, she stopped me near the front door. "Evelyn," she said with another polished smile, "I'd love for us to have dinner on Friday. Ethan and I have been working on a financial plan that benefits everyone." The words settled heavily in the air. A financial plan. For everyone. Something told me I wasn't going to like what I heard. Still, I smiled politely and agreed to come. Driving home, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling growing inside me. Arthur had always warned me that money had a strange way of revealing people's true character. I'd never fully understood what he meant. Now I was beginning to. I had a feeling Friday night's dinner wasn't really about family. It was about my future and someone else's plans for it. Friday evening arrived with steady rain drumming against my windshield as I pulled into Ethan and Lauren's driveway. I carried a pan of homemade chicken casserole, hoping a warm meal might soften whatever uncomfortable discussion awaited me. I was wrong. Dinner felt strangely rushed. Lauren barely touched her food, and Ethan hardly spoke at all. Every few minutes, I caught him glancing nervously toward his wife, as though waiting for permission to say something. The moment the dishes were cleared, Lauren stood and disappeared into the kitchen. She returned carrying a tablet and a folder neatly organized with printed charts. She placed them on the dining table with the confidence of someone preparing for a business presentation. "Evelyn," she began with a bright smile, "Ethan and I have spent weeks planning something that makes financial sense for all of us." I folded my hands and waited. She tapped the screen, revealing a spreadsheet filled with numbers, graphs, and property estimates. "You've lived alone since Arthur passed away," she said. "Your house has 4 bedrooms. That's far more space than one person needs." "My home suits me just fine," I replied. She nodded politely, ignoring my answer. "But think about the costs. Maintenance, insurance, utilities, property taxes. That's a lot of money tied up in a house that isn't being fully used." "It's completely paid for," I reminded her. "Exactly," she said excitedly, as though I'd proven her point. "That's why now is the perfect time to sell." I stared at her. She continued speaking before I could respond. "The housing market is excellent. You could sell your house for a fantastic price. Once it's sold, you could use part of the money to pay off our mortgage. That would free all of us from unnecessary debt." She swiped to the next page. "I've even calculated renovation costs for our basement. We could build you a beautiful private suite. You'd have your own bedroom, bathroom, and sitting area. We'd all live together like one big family." I looked at the screen in disbelief. Every dollar from the estimated sale of my home had already been assigned a purpose. Mortgage payoff, basement renovation, future landscaping, emergency household fund. Not one line mentioned my retirement. Not one line considered my independence. Lauren had planned every penny of my future without asking whether I wanted any part of it. I finally broke the silence. "What happens if I need assisted living someday?" She waved the concern away. "We'll figure that out when the time comes." "And if I prefer living on my own?" She smiled patiently as though explaining something obvious. "Why would you? You'll be close to your future grandchildren. You'll save money, and you'll be here whenever we need help." Whenever we need help. There it was. The real purpose behind the proposal. She wasn't offering me a home. She was recruiting a live-in babysitter who would finance their lifestyle. I slowly pushed my chair back. "I'm not selling my house." Lauren blinked. "I'm not paying off your mortgage." Her smile disappeared. "And I'm certainly not moving into your basement." The room fell silent. Color rushed into Lauren's face. "You're being incredibly selfish," she snapped. "You're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars while your own son struggles with a 30-year mortgage." "My son chose that mortgage," I answered calmly. I turned toward Ethan. "I raised you to accept responsibility for your own financial decisions." He stared at the tabletop, unable to meet my eyes. Not once did he defend me. Not once did he tell his wife she had gone too far. I picked up my purse. "Thank you for dinner." Lauren stood abruptly. "So that's it? You won't even think about it?" "I already have." I walked toward the front door. Behind me, I heard Ethan rush after me. "Mom, wait!" Rain soaked us both as we stepped onto the porch. "Lauren just wants everyone together," he pleaded. "Maybe we can compromise." "There is nothing to compromise." I unlocked my car. "My finances are no longer open for discussion." His shoulders slumped. I drove away without looking back. By the time I reached home, disappointment had replaced anger. Lauren's proposal hadn't been impulsive. She had researched property values, calculated renovation costs, planned my retirement. She'd been thinking about my money for much longer than I realized. As I sat alone in my quiet living room, Arthur's words echoed in my memory. "Protect what we've built." For years, I believed he meant our savings. That night, I finally understood. He also meant my independence. I made myself a cup of tea, switched on my computer, and decided to review every financial account I owned. If Lauren had already planned how to spend my money, I needed to make absolutely certain she never had the chance. That evening, my house felt unusually quiet. The silence gave me time to think, and the more I replayed the dinner conversation, the clearer everything became. Lauren hadn't made a reckless suggestion over dessert. She had prepared an entire financial strategy centered on my assets. She knew the estimated value of my home, had calculated renovation costs, and had already decided where my retirement money should go. The realization was unsettling. I carried my tea into the study, switched on my computer, and signed into my online banking accounts. I wasn't expecting to find anything suspicious. I simply wanted peace of mind. My checking account looked normal. So did my savings. There were no unusual withdrawals or unfamiliar transfers. I let out a slow breath, relieved that everything appeared to be exactly as I had left it. Then I remembered an old emergency credit card. Years earlier, when Ethan was attending college, I had added him as an authorized user. Back then, he drove an unreliable second-hand car that seemed to break down every other month. The card existed for emergencies only, unexpected repairs, medical expenses, or towing bills. After graduation, he rarely used it. Over time, I forgot he was still listed on the account. Curious, I logged in. A pending transaction immediately caught my attention. $3,480.75. The purchase had been made at an upscale outdoor furniture showroom. I stared at the screen. My pulse quickened. Luxury patio furniture wasn't an emergency. It certainly wasn't something Ethan would normally buy without asking me first. Then Lauren's comments from the previous week came rushing back. The stone patio, the backyard makeover, the dream of hosting elegant outdoor parties. Everything suddenly fit together. I wasn't angry, I was disappointed. Arthur and I had spent decades teaching Ethan that trust was earned through honesty. Somewhere along the way, that lesson had been pushed aside. I closed my laptop and went upstairs. There was no point arguing over the phone. The bank opened at 9 the next morning. I intended to be waiting when the doors unlocked. The following morning, I arrived 5 minutes before opening. A customer service representative named Olivia welcomed me into her office with a warm smile. "How can I help you today?" I placed the credit card on her desk. "I need to report this account as compromised." She nodded and began typing. "Has the card been lost?" "No." "Stolen." "In a way?" I explained that an authorized user had made a large purchase without my knowledge or permission. Olivia reviewed the account. "I see the pending charge. Would you like us to dispute it before it's finalized?" "Yes." She clicked several keys. "The transaction has been stopped." A weight lifted from my shoulders. "I'd also like to remove the authorized user immediately." "Of course." Within minutes, Ethan's name disappeared from the account. "A replacement card with a new number will arrive within a few business days," Olivia explained. "Please send it to my post office box instead of my home." "No problem." I thanked her, but I wasn't finished. Lauren had seen enough information on my retirement statement to know where I banked. Even if she couldn't legally access my accounts, I wasn't willing to leave anything to chance. Over the next 2 hours, I opened a brand new checking account, transferred my funds, closed the old account, and changed every online banking password I had. Each password was long, random, and impossible to guess. Before leaving, I scheduled text alerts for every transaction made on any of my accounts. No purchase, large or small, would ever happen without my knowing about it instantly. By lunchtime, every financial door had been locked. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. Relief. That afternoon, I gathered every important document from my filing cabinet: the deed to my house, Arthur's insurance records, investment paperwork, my will. I placed everything into a secure folder and rented a safe deposit box at the bank. As I slid the folder inside the steel compartment, I realized I wasn't protecting my money because I expected the worst. I was protecting it because trust, once damaged, should never be left unguarded. Returning home, I settled into my favorite chair with a book. For the first time in weeks, I felt prepared. If Lauren believed she could pressure me into financing the life she wanted, she was about to discover that my kindness should never have been mistaken for weakness. And somehow, deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Sooner or later, someone was going to discover that the credit card no longer worked. When that happened, I expected the phone to ring. 3 days later, I was trimming the roses in my backyard when my phone vibrated across the patio table. The caller ID read Ethan. I had expected this call. Setting my gardening gloves aside, I answered, "Hello? Mom!" His voice sounded rushed. "Can you call your credit card company right now?" I leaned back in my chair. "Why?" There was a long pause. "Lauren is at the furniture showroom. They're trying to process the final payment for the patio set, but your card was declined." "I know." Another silence. "You knew?" "Yes." His breathing grew heavier. "They think something's wrong. With the card." "Lauren is embarrassed." I spoke calmly. "There isn't anything wrong with the card." "What do you mean?" "I canceled it." The words landed like a stone. "You canceled it?" Ethan whispered. "I also removed you as an authorized user." "But why?" I couldn't believe he was asking. "You used an emergency credit card to purchase nearly $3,500 worth of luxury patio furniture without asking for my permission." He hesitated. "Lauren thought you'd understand." My understanding ended the moment someone decided my money belonged to them. "Mom, we were going to pay you back." "You never asked if you could borrow it." He had no answer. I continued. "A gift is something freely given. It is not permission to keep taking." "I didn't think to." "That's exactly the problem." The line went quiet again. "Tell Lauren," I said firmly, "that if she wants patio furniture, she is welcome to purchase it with her own money." Without waiting for another excuse, I ended the call. Half an hour later, an SUV pulled sharply into my driveway. Lauren climbed out before the engine stopped. She marched to my front door, pushed it open without knocking, and stormed into the living room. Ethan followed several steps behind, looking pale. "How could you do this to me?" Lauren demanded. I remained seated with my cup of tea. "What exactly did I do?" "You humiliated me." She threw her handbag onto the sofa. "The manager treated me like I was trying to commit fraud." I looked at her steadily. "You were attempting to use a credit card that wasn't yours." "It belonged to family." "No, it belonged to you. And I never gave you permission." Her cheeks reddened. "You have more money than you'll ever spend." "That's none of your concern." "You live alone in that huge house while we're trying to build a future." "I already helped you build that future." I reminded her of the $10,000 housewarming gift. "You chose to believe it was only the beginning." Lauren folded her arms. "Families share. Families respect boundaries." For the first time, Ethan stepped forward. "Mom," his voice was barely above a whisper, "we made a mistake." I looked at him. "You allowed someone else to decide how my money should be spent." "I'm sorry." It sounded sincere, but it wasn't enough. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired with a single apology. I stood and walked toward the small table near the hallway. "There is one more thing." Lauren watched cautiously. "The spare key," she frowned. "What about it?" "I gave Ethan that key years ago for emergencies." She shrugged. "We still have it. I'd like it back." Her expression hardened. "No." I raised an eyebrow. "No? What if something happens to you? We need access." "You need permission." She crossed her arms. "We're keeping it." For a brief moment, the room fell silent. Then I smiled. "Very well." I opened the front door. "I think this visit is over." Lauren muttered something under her breath before brushing past me. Ethan lingered. "I'm sorry, Mom. I hope one day you understand why this happened." He nodded sadly and walked to the car. As soon as they drove away, I picked up my phone. Within 2 hours, a locksmith had replaced every exterior lock on my house with new high-security deadbolts. The old key became nothing more than a useless piece of metal. The following morning, I turned my attention to the garage. Over the years, Ethan and Lauren had filled one entire corner with boxes they didn't have room for in their new home. Old textbooks, winter coats, kitchen appliances, decorations they no longer wanted. Apparently, my garage had become their free storage unit. Not anymore. I spent the morning loading every box into my car. By noon, I pulled into their driveway. I stacked everything neatly beside the front door. Then I placed one final package on top. Inside the small gift box were 3 things: the destroyed pieces of the canceled credit card, a printed list of nearby self-storage facilities, and a handwritten note. Respect is worth more than money. I hope someday you understand the difference." I rang the doorbell and returned to my car. As I drove away, I saw Ethan open the front door. He stared at the pile of boxes in stunned silence. Then, for the first time in weeks, I heard him raise his voice. Not at me, but inside the house. The perfect picture Lauren had tried so hard to create was finally beginning to crack. 6 months passed before life finally settled into a comfortable rhythm again. The weeks immediately after I returned, Ethan and Lauren's belongings were quiet. My phone rarely rang, and when it did, it was never Lauren. She made it perfectly clear that she blamed me for everything that had happened. According to her, I had embarrassed her, humiliated her in front of strangers, and destroyed what she called family unity. I no longer felt the need to defend myself. People who believe they are entitled to someone else's hard-earned savings rarely see themselves as the problem. When access to money disappears, they often mistake healthy boundaries for cruelty. I had stopped trying to change that perception. Ethan, however, surprised me. One Sunday afternoon, he called and asked if he could stop by for coffee. He came alone. There were no speeches, no excuses, no requests for financial help. He simply sat across from me at the kitchen table, quietly stirring sugar into his coffee. For several minutes, we spoke about ordinary things: the weather, his work, and the vegetable garden I had started behind the house. The conversation felt natural, almost like old times. Eventually, he cleared his throat. "I'm sorry, Mom." I looked up. "I should have stopped everything before it went that far." His voice carried genuine regret. "I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal because Lauren said we'd pay you back. I convinced myself that family wouldn't mind." I folded my hands around my coffee mug. "Family doesn't take without asking." He nodded. "I know that now." There was nothing more to say. An apology couldn't erase the past, but it could become the first step toward rebuilding trust. From that day forward, Ethan visited about once a month, always alone. He never mentioned my savings. He never discussed my house, and he certainly never asked for money. It became an unspoken agreement between us. Some subjects would remain closed forever. Meanwhile, I decided to invest in something entirely different, not someone else's dream, my own. I hired a local landscaping company to redesign my backyard. Over several weeks, they planted colorful flower beds, trimmed overgrown hedges, installed stone walkways, and built a peaceful seating area beneath my favorite maple tree. Every afternoon, I carried a book and a glass of iced tea outside. Birds gathered near the flower beds, while butterflies drifted through the lavender. Instead of worrying about protecting my future from people who viewed me as an opportunity, I spent my time enjoying the life Arthur and I had worked so hard to build. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the trees, I thought about everything that had happened. At first, I believed giving Ethan and Lauren $10,000 had been a mistake. Later, I realized it had been a blessing in disguise. That gift revealed something money alone never could. It exposed character. If Lauren had been satisfied with my generosity, none of the later events would have unfolded. Instead, she saw one accidental glimpse of my retirement savings and began planning a future that depended on spending wealth she had never earned. That single moment taught me a lesson I would never forget. Generosity should come from love, never from obligation. Helping family is a beautiful thing, but only when that help is appreciated, not expected. The moment kindness becomes entitlement, generosity loses its meaning. Looking back, I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel disappointed. Mostly I felt grateful that I discovered the truth before signing away my independence. Grateful that I secured my finances before anyone could misuse them again. And grateful that I finally understood the importance of protecting more than just money. Peace deserves protection too. Many people believe setting boundaries means pushing loved ones away. I've learned the opposite. Healthy boundaries reveal who truly respects you. Those who value you as a person will remain. Those who valued only what you could provide will eventually walk away on their own. As I sat beneath the maple tree listening to the gentle rustle of leaves overhead, I smiled to myself. My home was still mine. My future remained secure. My relationship with my son had begun to heal because it was finally built on honesty instead of expectation. Most importantly, I no longer felt guilty for saying one simple word, no. Sometimes the quietest answer is also the strongest, and protecting your peace is one investment that will always pay the greatest return.